Welcome to SAT TV's news. I am Shanna Esprit, your presenter. In our top stories, PM announces date for national budget. Bahamas to introduce cervical cancer vaccines into public healthcare systems. There are no ambulances out here. 911 calls details horror of Asiana crash. And in sports, West Indies one spot from world top 5 cricket team list. Details of these will follow. Welcome back. A $4.9 million contract will be signed today, July 11th, for the rehabilitation of the Pennville to Vilcaz Road at a town hall meeting at the Pennville Government School. Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit said the contract will be signed between the government and the Public Works. Here are some details regarding the particulars of the meeting.
This road, we've seen serious deterioration of it, probably caused by water project there, but also because of the wear and tear on the road itself and a lot of washing away of the surface. So we have approved, the Minister of Finance has approved the contract, and we'll be signing that contract. We expect work to begin virtually immediately after the signing of the contract.
Mr. Skerrit said the people of Pennville have been very patient and tolerant for having to bear with these deplorable conditions of the road. As their parliamentary representative, the Prime Minister says he is very happy to be in a position to sign before the people of Pennville.
The contract for the complete rehabilitation of the road from Pennville to Vilcaz. A very large portion of the works, which will involve concrete works, concrete roads, retaining walls, concrete drains. It is expected that those aspects of the contract would be subcontracted to local people. So you're going to need carpenters for the construction of the formwork and masons and so forth, and tradesmen, semi-skilled and unskilled laborers and individuals, and also truckers.
According to Mr. Skerrit, quite a number of residents between Vilcaz and Pennville will be employed for the furtherance of the upcoming project. In more news, Dominicans who may have noticed a decrease in the cost for fuel surcharge on their Domlec bills at various times this year should know that it did not happen magically, but as a result of increased rainfall. This is according to Public Relations Officer of Domlec, Mrs. Adina Bellot Valentine. Although earlier in the year the fuel surcharge was about 55 cents for the last few months, the surcharge has dropped to 49, 44 and 42 cents in some cases, she stated.
So far in June, we have noticed a 31.6 cents, and in July we are looking at 33 cents. This is the lowest that we have been in fuel surcharge probably since 2009. And it is attributed to the rain. We are realizing for the last 2 months, May and June, we are realizing about 40 to 44% of hydro production. So the rain has been helping. We have to take into consideration though that, sometimes we see a drop in the fuel surcharge. The hydro is producing well, but then the price of gas continues to rise. And sometimes it is difficult, to disconnect between the two, because as the price of oil goes up, then we do not realize the kind of savings that we would have.
Mrs. Valentine noted this fuel surcharge reduction that Domlec has noticed is a positive sign. She said as long as they use diesel for generation of electricity, the fuel surcharge will be present on all customers' electricity bills. It is unavoidable.
We are, of course, government leading towards the whole production of geothermal. They have pros and cons like everything else. Persons have different opinions as far as geothermal is concerned. But If that's going to help, then, probably that's the way we have to go. But as long as we're using fuel for electricity generation, there is going to be a fuel surcharge.
In other news, a parliamentary representative for the Roseau Central constituency, Honorable Norris Prevost, speaking at a recent Schools Sports Awards ceremony, re-emphasized the need for an indoor sports facility. According to Mr. Prevost, this is something the sports division should advocate for, as it is very important for sports in Dominica. He noted there is no excuse for Dominica not to have an indoor sports facility, as there is land and resources available for its construction.
As Member of Parliament for Roseau Central, I want to assure the athletes here and those listening that one of my commitments is to advocate and to fight for the construction of an indoor sporting facility for athletes in Dominica, where we can have prize-giving ceremonies like these, where your parents can be invited to share in your glory when you're receiving your prizes, the same way your parents are invited to share in your excellence and your glory when you get first-class honors at graduation and things of that nature.
This, he said, will greatly aid in the development of Dominica's sportsmen and women and aid in their training, especially during unfavorable weather conditions that hinder their training efforts. In the past, Mr. Prevost has appealed for the establishment of the Dominica Sports Development Corporation to serve as a vehicle to develop Dominica as a leading sporting nation and to bring about increased use of the Windsor Park Stadium by locals, especially the schools in the Roseau environs and the Roseau community. Mr. Prevost suggested that the DSDC should be a joint venture between the major sports association, sports clubs, Dominica Lottery, the private sector, government, the general public, and other stakeholders, stating its mission should be to make Dominica a world-class sporting nation. According to the MP, the Dominica Sports Development Corporation would be mandated to manage the Windsor Park Stadium in a manner that ensures a proper balance between the development of our young local sportsmen and women and a hosting of international sporting and other events. In more stories, Prime Minister Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit has announced that the much talked about 2013 to 2014 national budget will be presented on July 24th at the House of Parliament and will begin from 10 a.m.
Clearly, it's an important budget for the country, considering the fact that the world continues to battle and grapple with the fiscal and economic challenges. And of course, no country has been immune to the challenges confronting the world. Every single country from the developed to the developing world has been experiencing challenges. But I believe the Cabinet has been able to put together a very forward-looking, progressive budget considering all things. And the budget will seek to address a number of issues. Of course, as I've indicated in previous interactions with the public, all the safety nets will be protected and ensure that appropriate funding continue to be made available to all the various aspects of the safety net, whether it is for education, whether it is for the elderly, whether it is for children.
The budget will increase the contributions to a number of non-profit organizations, including the Grotto Home for the Homeless, as well as the Dominica Infirmary. The issue of unemployment will be addressed with a number of measures in the budget, like short-term and long-term employment. The Prime Minister said there will be a number of capital projects which will aid in providing a number of much-needed jobs in the country. Consultations with the private sector and the unions produced a number of suggestions which have been modified to some extent to be used by the government, he added.
There's an increase in spending for the Ministry of Health, and we have identified an exhaustive priority list required by the Ministry of Health to better provide care for our patients, not only cancer patients, but our citizens as a whole. For example, one of the most important pieces of, well, we've been buying a number of pieces of machinery equipment, but one of the important, in my mind, one of the most important pieces of equipment will be the allocations for. It's one for a mammogram, and secondly, an MRI. And because for me, as a military country, I take little offense to people having to go to Antigua to do MRIs and to Barbados and to Martinique just for an MRI. And so we have made provisions for the purchase of an MRI, and also I believe for the acquisition of an additional CT scan.
According to Mr. Skerritt, the hospital needs to have all the necessary equipment to improve the quality of healthcare for our citizens. Therefore, investing in such equipment is vital. He is also urging Dominicans to follow healthy lifestyles, as certain life choices can contribute to healthier bodies. Many of the non-communicable diseases are preventable by what we eat as well as proper exercise, he said. In other stories, today, Thursday, July 11th, a major accident occurred in Fonkole near the Coast Guard base involving Dominica Brewery and Beverages Limited Kubuli truck and a black Toyota Corolla car. The car registration number PE455 collided with the back of the Kubuli truck, which left the truck flipped to a side. The car received extensive damages. The collision occurred at the intersection outside of Domlec's office in the vicinity of the Dominica Coast Guard. Reports indicated that the car was traveling from the northern direction, whilst the truck traveled from the southern direction. The driver of the car has been transported to the hospital. However, the extent of his injuries is unknown at this time. Police officers and fire services officials all rushed to the scene. SAT TV's news will provide updates as soon as they become available. In more news, the Dominica Business Forum said the private sector's $106 million debt to the Dominican government is of great concern. Chairman of the Business Forum, Stuart Paris, is calling on businesses to settle their outstanding taxes.
We do not have the details of how that was accumulated. We do not know if it is owed by businesses who are operating and are non-compliant, or we do not know if some of this tax is owed by businesses who no longer operate. We really don't know the details, but it's also a matter of concern that the private sector can be owing the government more than $100 million. And we would want to encourage all private sector operators to pay their taxes.
Mr. Paris said in order for them to pay their taxes, they must be able to earn the money to do so. However, if business is not progressing as it should, then proprietors will not be able to earn that money to pay those taxes.
Introduce some kind of element that will help all of us and make it easier for us to do business and pay our taxes.
Deterioration in the income which government collected from companies is also worrying to members of the forum.
Between 2009 and 2012, the tax revenue that was collected by the government from corporate bodies, from compliant corporate bodies, fell by about $9 million, which is about 30% of what they collected in 2009. And that was really troubling for us, because if the reason why corporate tax fell, we assume it's because the corporate businesses were not doing very well. And if business don't do very well, government collect less revenue, and that's not good for the country.
The Dominica Business Forum is made up of 10 private sectors: the Dominica Employers Federation, the Dominica Association of Industry and Commerce, the Builders and Contractors Association of Dominica, the Dominica Hotel and Tourism Association, the Dominica Manufacturers Association, the Dominica Coalition for Service Industry, the National Development Foundation of Dominica, the Dominica Chamber of Agribusiness, DAPEX, and the Association of Bankers and Financial Institutions. In other news, today, Thursday, July 11th, the Dominica Fire and Ambulance Services received 2 new ambulances at the Fire Brigade headquarters. Chief Fire Officer Mr. Josiah Dupuy considers today historic, but would have preferred to have this ceremony on the 24th to highlight the fact that the fire and ambulance service is a 24-hour job.
I am celebrating because I am quite elated for the very innovative concept which the Honourable Minister, who is here with us, had a great hand in. I am elated because the PS, who is sitting here with us, but also PS Bruno, who is currently on vacation, also had a great hand in. I also want to pay particular acknowledgement to individuals who often work sort of in the shadows. And yes, Ms. Williams, I speak of yourself, Senior Administrative Officer, and also the Senior Accounting Officer in the Ministry, Ms. Marina Williams and Ms. Arlette Williams. I ask you to please join with me and give them an applause for the work that they have done.
According to Mr. Dupuy, numerous calls, invoices, and requests to the Ministry of National Security transpired before the handing over of the 2 ambulances.
But the effort didn't really stop there. The effort also included work from individuals like the Deputy Chief Fire Officer. It also included work from the administrative staff here at the Fire and Ambulance Services, and I think they've done themselves a fantastic job. But certainly, it would seem to me that the greatest accolade this morning goes to the maintenance staff of our garage. And for a brief moment, I would ask your indulgence as we focus on the work that they have done. They, as a matter of fact, when this concept was born, they were referred humorously as that unit that they function in was referred humorously as the retrofitting unit. I say humorously, probably to be kind.
Honorable Charles Savre, Minister of National Security, stated that one of the mandates for fire services is to provide an ambulance service for the sick and injured to and from their homes, health centers, and hospitals island-wide. There are 7 health districts throughout the island and health centers within these health districts that cater to the healthcare needs of the individuals in their respectful communities.
The more serious cases in the districts are referred to the Princess Margaret Hospital in Roseau. Now, even with the best efforts of the fire service mechanics, and you heard the chief says that we should refer to them as the fire service engineering section, it has not been possible to keep a sufficient number of ambulances in a road-worthy condition to ensure that an ambulance is stationed in each health district. For the past several months, the St. Joseph and Grand Bay health districts have been without the service of an ambulance stationed in those health districts. It's 2 kids. Thank you.
In other stories, Ministry of Public Works, Energy and Ports, Mr. Rayburn Blackmore, has made it clear that he supports Dominica's geothermal project. It is the fundamental principle of this government to engage committee members from the grassroots levels, he stated. Mr. Blackmore noted that the public needs to buy into the idea of developing the geothermal resource to the highest level.
It has been 40 years since the first oil crisis. And during that time of that oil crisis, net importing energy states put energy security at the fore of the policy direction. The important question to ask ourselves, 40 years after, are we not faced with the same challenges? Dominica, just like many other CARICOM member states, Dominica does not have natural gas or oil. What we have is potential in renewable energy.
He said the government recognizes in moving forward that there are a number of mitigated factors needed to ensure that the environment is given central position within this particular exercise. Since 1969, studies have shown that Dominica is the leading potential in geothermal energy development. The parliamentary representative explained that in both 2003 and 2008, the government did all the relevant investigations and estimates in relation to that potential.
That was followed by 2 free test wells in the Rosa Valley catchment area. I think we have to be judged thus far on our record. We are able to go through those processes with no harm to the environment because we were able to engage the best talent involved in that process thus far. What we have to do now as a country is to put all our energies together so that we all can plan to manage that resource and to benefit from the prosperity that may emerge as a result. It would require, therefore, ensuring that we build requisite talent. That is why we have started to put programs in place to ensure that our young people can be trained in the various contemporary disciplines so that they can benefit.
Mr. Blackmore is certain that the government will ensure that citizens' property rights are protected. According to the minister, the government is working expeditiously to develop the island. This is why he said the government has invested thousands to place streetlights underneath the cliff.
And this government is going to be the only government to deal with this issue confronting the people in the eastern part of this country, from Bajab going back to the White River, and from Pokase going back into Pidusufre, Hatton Garden, Caribbean, frontally. No other government will do it for you. Because tell you why? They're all saying we can't eat concrete. If you're saying that, it means you don't invest in the road network. And just ask it. They were scared to really invest in geothermal development. Because let me say something to you in closing. In closing, no, I'm closing now, In closing, the first report that was done by the UNDP was in 1969 on geothermal. 1969. The Honorable Prime Minister was not born yet. But there were many administrations subsequent to 1969. Isn't that so?
Mr. Blackmore said that no one previously confronted the issue with high energy costs or made any deliberate effort to capitalize on Dominica's potential in the geothermal projects. And in court news, Marcellus Shillingford of Pottersville was fined $280 to be paid by July 31st, 2013, or in default sentenced to 1 month imprisonment after pleading guilty to the charge of theft when he faced Magistrate Candia George on Thursday, July 11th. He was also ordered to pay compensation of $14 forthwith to Wyke's Auto Company, Napa. According to the facts of the case, on Friday, July 7th, an employee of Napa was reviewing their security footage when it was noticed that on Thursday, July 4th, Shillingford placed a bottle of WD-40 into his pants pocket and left the store without paying. A report was made and an investigation was launched. When the investigation officer met Shillingford at his home and informed him of the report, he said he was sorry he did that, and if he has to pay 5 times the amount, he will. He was then cautioned and arrested. Magistrate Candia advised the defendant to think before he acts, as certain actions can have negative consequences. She also told him that if he can't afford something, do without it or wait for when he can purchase it. In more court news, Otis George of Pottersville, who appeared before Magistrate Candia George on Thursday, July 11th, was fined $500 on the charge of possession of cannabis after pleading guilty. The fine is to be paid by August 31st, 2013, or in default, he will be sentenced to 1 month in prison. George was caught with the illegal substance in the form of a cannabis cigarette on Saturday, July 6th, during a mobile patrol by officers from the drug squad. Magistrate George advised George to stay away from marijuana, as it will not help him but only put him in trouble. 18-year-old Brenton Tony Christian of River Street, who was caught with cannabis during the mobile patrol on the same day, also pled guilty to possession of cannabis. He was fined $500 to be paid by August 31st, or in default will be sentenced to 1 month imprisonment. Magistrate Candia George advised the young man, who has been in trouble with the law since he was a juvenile, said he needs to change his friends and hang out with positive persons to change his life for the better. He was warned that as this is his second time he appeared as an adult for possession of cannabis, the third time he will be sentenced to the prison. This has been the local segment of the news. Coming up next, the regional highlights.